all knew that a new Fire Emblem game was likely to be shown off at this Nintendo Direct. And lo and behold, not only was it announced, it was the closer, demonstrating Nintendo's faith in this franchise to consistently do well and please hardcore fans. This was a huge announcement, but right now, all you can see from the Nintendo critics is that this game was disappointing, it's bad, Fire Emblem is played out. This is just nothing but a cope. Fire Emblem is, and has been for a long time, one of Nintendo's most profitable franchises. This is a huge, huge deal, and the general Nintendo community can't seem to bring themselves to admit it. Like, it is shocking the sheer amount of people I saw try and say that this was going to be a new Kid Icarus game going by like the opening shots. Kid Icarus is not as relevant as Fire Emblem. It has never been as relevant as Fire Emblem. So people really need to move past this idea that Fire Emblem is some played out thing that nobody cares about, because not only does this series consistently do well, it's quickly becoming one of Nintendo's most important franchises. This is a huge announcement, and it is unbelievably frustrating to me to see so many people try and write this off and ignore it. And at this point, we as Fire Emblem fans really need to start bullying anybody who tries downplaying this IP, because I have seen this happen time and time again over the past decade or so. Ever since the Switch era started, we've seen nothing but nonstop coping and seething about Fire Emblem, about how it's supposedly overexposed and how it allegedly doesn't innovate and do anything new. I do think it needs to be understood to non-fans that Fire Emblem has been innovating more than I think most other Nintendo properties, because I think a lot of normies don't understand just how wildly different these games actually are. Just compare Three Houses to Engage. Completely different games, completely different tones, completely different gameplay mechanics from the same franchise. There has been, for the past decade, this very stubborn refusal from the community to acknowledge just how big Fire Emblem actually is. It was part of the narrative when Fire Emblem Engage came out to say it was a massive bomb, it was a failure, it didn't do that well, but in reality, it just didn't do as well as the all-time best-selling game in the franchise, Three Houses. Fire Emblem Engage still sold significantly more than any Fire Emblem pre-Awakening. And that to me demonstrates how this series, alongside its sister series, Xenoblade, is kind of rapidly growing the JRPG fan base on Nintendo consoles. Because yes, these games are bigger and better than the competition on other platforms. Fire Emblem is way better than Final Fantasy Tactics or Total War or whatever slop people are hyping up this weekend. Xenoblade surpasses modern Final Fantasy and modern Dragon Quest quite handedly. And there's just this very strong refusal from the general Nintendo community to acknowledge it. There's this weird racist bias against anything that has an anime aesthetic. People seethe about these games constantly because of the character designs and how they look. And it, to me, it just shrieks of just insecurity and an inability to grasp what this brand, what this style is trying to do. Like, these games should be well regarded for what they are, but every single time a new game gets announced, we have to go through this song and dance of people complaining about things that don't matter, of people complaining about Smash Bros. And how many Fire Emblem characters are in that game, people complaining about getting so many of these games, people who cannot accept the fact that Fire Emblem is in a golden age right now and has been putting out nothing but bangers for the past several years. So, to put it very simply, I think this announcement by itself should have been seen as some major closing event, but the community just kind of refuses to admit it. They're still sitting there trying to gaslight you into thinking the Switch 2 has no games. They have no idea what's coming. They have no idea how successful this game is going to be. They have no idea how big Fire Emblem is. They still won't accept how successful Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza have been, and they are just going to continue bending over backwards, pretending as if some random indie game is going to surpass the biggest strategy RPG franchise in the world. And I do think this really needs to be emphasized about Fire Emblem at this point, is that it is the biggest strategy RPG franchise in the world. When it comes to this specific niche, when it comes to strategy RPGs, Fire Emblem is dominant. Nothing is more popular than Fire Emblem. Nothing gets as many releases as Fire Emblem. Nothing pulls these kinds of numbers like Fire Emblem. And there is still this insane delusion among the community that nobody cares about these games, nobody plays them, and that this is a niche fringe thing that Nintendo is obsessed with for no reason. Or alternatively, much like Splatoon, like, oh, it's just for the Japanese player base. These kind of statements are and always have been a cope. Fire Emblem is popular outside of Japan. Fire Emblem is constantly doing well. Three Houses is one of the most beloved games on Nintendo Switch. You are completely delusional if you think the direct prequel to Three Houses is not going to do huge numbers. Engage was heavily criticized for not being enough like Three Houses. So you're going to sit there and turn around and complain about Three Houses 2 be existing. I think fanboys and just general Nintendo fans are just straight up delusional about this game and its relevancy and just how much fans are eagerly anticipating this. The more I watch this footage, the more I see the characters and the ideas and the themes, I'm starting to get more and more excited for it. This is something that the Switch 2 really needed. A really big RPG announcement. But here we are watching the community do everything it possibly can to deny Fire Emblem's credibility as an A-list Nintendo franchise. Desperately trying to write this thing off as just a non-game, something that nobody cares about or plays, when in reality this is a rapidly growing franchise that is becoming more and more popular all the time and should be considered just this milestone when it comes to just top tier Nintendo IPs. The simple fact of the matter is that, like, if you're watching this trailer and you're complaining about Kid Icarus, if you're complaining about Smash Bros, like, you really need to reevaluate your priorities. Like, why are you not talking about Fire Emblem? Why are you not getting excited for Fire Emblem? Why are you so anxious to avoid these games no matter what? And I do think it does need to be emphasized more that the people who complain about these games, like, don't know the first thing about them, they don't play them, they don't know anything about them at all. Like, it is telling how many people just see about these games and yet never really think about picking them up for themselves. I actually just went ahead and watched Arlo's video while I was recording this. And one of the things he tried to argue was this idea that, like, we didn't need a Fire Emblem right now. Like, this didn't need to close out the showcase. And, he sounds very unenthusiastic about the game. He doesn't care about it at all. I That to me is very, very telling. The mindset as to the Pretendo audience is this isn't a hype announcement. People aren't going to give me views if I act excited about it. So therefore I am just not. Like that's Arlo's mentality. That's like so many other of these personalities mentalities. Like this is clearly, something to look forward to, a major Nintendo Switch 2 game that we don't know a lot about at this stage. And yet so many people are actively trying to downplay this. When this is if this is anything like Three Houses, this is going to be like a several 100-hour long game that you can keep coming back to endlessly time and time again. I know people who have put hundreds of hours into Three Houses. Like it is to like a certain demographic this endlessly replayable game. So Fortune's Weave is definitely something at the very least that we should be keeping our eye on. But yet, among the community, the reception was fairly tepid. When I think this is one of the bigger announcements at the Nintendo Direct. Now, I myself wasn't super excited when I first saw it, but you know, my opinion is that it's kind of difficult for me to judge the quality of Fire Emblem games by a trailer. So, the more I see the trailer, the more I get fired up about it. But like for a lot of people, I feel they are downplaying this game for the wrong reasons. And we really need to discuss that going forward as this game gets more and more promotion, as people talk about it more and more. And I think especially as more Fire Emblem titles start coming out, because this is a franchise that is not going anywhere. It is one of Nintendo's most successful franchises right now, and it is high time that we as Nintendo fans start acknowledging that.